Hi, I'm Jenna Cinnamon, and welcome to my instructional design plan. This will outline my key aspects of the paper that I've completed over the course of the last 7 weeks for my fall 2014 semester. The components of my ID plan are as follows: the performance context, instructional goal, goal diagram, needs, instructional strategy, assessment, determining success, and reflection. My performance context, it is all about a Foundations of College Math course. It is a 12th grade course provided at Indian River High School. It requires a lot of algebra skills. There's many real-world problems focusing on applying the math that the students have learned throughout their high school career to prepare them for the college and a future career. This is actually a self-contained special education classroom. That means that all students in the classroom do have an IEP. There is no regular ed students in this section of the Foundations of College Math. Indian River High School is part of the Indian River School District. There is also a sister high school called Sussex Central High School located in Georgetown, Delaware. They do follow slightly different curriculum, and the Foundations of College Math is only offered at Indian River School District in the exact same format. There is a similar course at Sussex Central, but they do use a different text. The instructional goal that I developed was that 12th grade students will be able to develop and accurately solve multi-step algebraic equations derived from the Foundations of College Math curriculum. Indian River School District works very hard to develop curriculum maps. So in order for my instructional goal to be developed and students to master this goal, I wanted to make sure I followed the curriculum map for the Indian River School District and specifically Indian River High School. This is a screenshot of my instructional goal. I made sure to include some higher order thinking vocabulary on my goal diagram and really break down the instructional goal into 3 key learning objectives. The first one is students will be able to solve multi-step algebraic equations for a given variable. Then students will be able to distinguish what information is needed in order to solve a real-world problem. And finally, students will be able to solve real-world problems derived from the Foundations of College Math curriculum. In the end, I would look for students to put all 3 of these components together. The rest of the goal diagram outlines what students will need to be able to do to meet those 3 learning objectives in order to master the instructional goal. One of the entry-level skills that I've identified is that students will be able to identify inverse operations in math. This is something students start looking at as early as 6th and 7th grade, and it's important that they still have that skill throughout 12th grade. The students' needs outlined in my ID plan are just basic computation. Students are lacking the basic skills such as adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. There is a huge calculator dependency versus it just being their accommodation in their IEP. Some students in the class really do need the calculator in order to solve a problem, and others are using the calculator more as a crutch. And throughout my ID plan, I would love for students to become less dependent on the calculator. Word problems I've seen throw students off at any grade level. There's no exception for 12th grade. Since this is a real-world math class, there are many word problems, and students really need to identify what's going on in the problem and how to solve it. And finally, the students need to be able to just take what we learn in the classroom and apply it to real situations that they're going to encounter throughout the rest of their lives. Sometimes it's hard for them to see the bigger picture, and that's something I feel like they need in the classroom. An instructional strategy I'd like to apply into the classroom would be the modified 5-3-1. Individually, students would identify 5 real-world situations that would require them to make an algebraic equation and to solve. Next, students would be in a small group to narrow down their examples to 3 top examples that they think they could solve. And finally, with a partner, they would develop an example problem and explain how to solve the algebraic equation in their own words. This would be a great way to generate a discussion with students, making sure they can explain how they got their answer. Since, writing down numbers is one thing, but explaining to your peers what you've done takes it to a whole nother level. For assessment, I actually placed a word splash at the bottom of this page. There's many types of assessments I would plan to use, such as formative assessments. Now, these could be something completed individually or even with a group. Formative assessments could even be something as simple as classroom observations during the day. At the end of the unit, I would make the students take a summative assessment, which assesses for the learning, and of the learning. With the summative, it would be in the form of a post-test, so I could compare the results to their pre-test. Exam view is something that we use to generate tests in this course. Exam view came with the instructional package, and it already has the standards outlined for each question, answer keys, and they can be in forms of multiple choice or even short answer. And finally, I'd like to incorporate technology. Socrative is a great tool that I would love to use with the students so they can get immediate feedback. I can track their progress easier, and I just feel like the students would be more engaged by using a different format in the classroom. To determine the success of my ID plan, I would look for student feedback. Ask the students what we could do differently, what would help them learn better. They know themselves pretty well in 12th grade, and I feel like it would be important and a great way to build rapport by asking them their thoughts. For classroom observations, I would look at how the students are engaged in the lessons, if there's any problems that we're seeing, and the post-test results will show me what exactly students have learned from the lesson. I can compare it to the pre-test to see the student growth. If I'm noticing some students are getting the same problems wrong, I would look to identify patterns in these errors and finally adjust and reteach as necessary. Teaching is always going to evolve and change, and I'm looking to improve, and that may even mean going back and reteaching a lesson through this ID plan. Finally is my reflection. Taking a look back, this was a long process, but it's really been eye-opening. I do need to focus more on cultural diversity. I honestly look at my students, and I know they're all different, but I acknowledge they're all different and go on with my day. I need to find a way to incorporate their differences in my classroom. I've realized the importance of pre-assessments and identifying the needs. I need to know where the students start so I can figure out how I need to get them where they're going. I need to implement a variety of instructional strategies, such as the 5-3-1, anticipation guides, numbered heads, whatever it may be. This will keep the kids engaged in the classroom. Formative assessments will be key. They will help me see how the students are progressing towards my instructional goal. And in the end, I need to evaluate my plan itself and not just the student's performance. I may find the flaws are not in the students' learning, but in my instruction. Overall, this has been a great experience. Though time-consuming, it can really change how I'm teaching my students in the end. I hope you have a great rest of the year.